This is 5.1b, part 1. So before we launch into point-slope form, which is the third form of the equation we're going to look at, we need to review some laws about fractions. People often struggle a lot with fractions, and it's just good to go over some of the fundamentals. Okay, so first thing is reducing a fraction. So when working with fractions, you often want to reduce them to the simplest form. To do that, we always divide by the numerator and denominator by the same number. It has to be the same number. You can't divide them by different numbers. So for example here, 18 divides by 9. So we could say divide by 9, which would give us 2 over 1, and any number over 1 is just a whole number, so our final answer would be 2. Next one we have is 4 over 16. So if we look at 4 over 16, there is a number that divides both. We can divide top and bottom by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is going to give us 1. 16 divided by 4 gives 4. So here our simplified version is 1 over 4. And here we have 54 over 22. So you can figure out that both of these can be divided by 2 to simplify. So you get 27 over 11 as a final answer. Okay, so that's simplifying a fraction. The important thing is that both the top and bottom are divided by the same number. Next, we have multiplying and dividing fractions. When you're multiplying or dividing, you do so across the top and bottom. So across here, 2 times 4, across the bottom, 3 times 5. If multiplying with a whole number, we write that number over 1. So here we have 3, so we would write it as 3 over 1 when we multiply. If we're dividing, we flip our second fraction and then multiply. So here, instead of trying to divide 32 by 16, we're going to flip this one upside down, whoops, like this, and we get 32 over 54 times 3 over 16. So you never actually have to divide, you're always multiplying. We always reduce our answer to the simplest form. All right, so let's try these examples. So this one, we're going to go across the top, 2 times 4, we get 8. Then we have 3 times 5 on the bottom, and that gives us 15. We cannot simplify that, so that's our final answer. Next one, whoops, we have, this is a whole number, so we're going to write it over 1. So this is our top here, negative 8 times 3, which gives us negative 24. And then we have 11 times 1, which is just 11. This also cannot be simplified. So this is our final answer. Whoops, where am I? Here. So now this one, we've already done our flipping for it being division. So we're going to multiply these two numbers together, 32 times 3. And we're going to get 96. And then we're going to multiply 54 and 16 together. You get 864. Okay, then you're going to need to play around on your calculator a bit to see what you can reduce this by and how much. But you'll find out by playing around with the numbers that you can divide both top and bottom by 96. You might have to do this in a few steps, like try dividing it by 2 first, and then 3, and etc. But eventually you can figure out that you can divide both by 96. So you end up with 1 over 9 as a final answer. And then this last one over here, we write 3 over 2 and then times, and we're going to flip the second fraction, 3 over 5. So now we can multiply across the top. 3 times 3 is going to give us 9, and across the bottom, 2 times 5 is going to give us, 10. Okay. So that's multiplying or dividing. Next, we move on to adding and subtracting fractions. So this is often where people really struggle. So if we're adding or subtracting fractions, the first thing we need is a common denominator. Okay, we can't add fractions that don't have the same number on the bottom. Okay, so let's do that first. So here we have 3 and 5. So our common denominator is going to be 15. So we need to do the same thing, whatever we do to the bottom. So to make this 15, we're going to multiply it by 5. Whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do the identical thing to the top so that the fraction stays consistent. So we're going to multiply the top and bottom here both by 5. This one, to make 15, we're going to multiply the top and bottom by 3. So then we get 10 over 15 plus 12 over 15. Okay. When you're adding and subtracting, you only add and subtract the numerator, so these numbers on top. The bottoms don't change. So this final answer is going to be over 15. Okay? We ignore that. So we're just going to add these two together, 10 and 12. When we do, we add 10 plus 12, we get 22. Okay? We look to see if we can reduce it. In this case, we can't, so that's the final answer. Let's try the next one. Here we have 3 and 4. So we can make a common denominator of 12. So we're going to multiply this by 4 to get 12. So that means we also multiply the top by 4. This one we're going to multiply 3. So we also multiply the top by 3. Whoops. So when we do that, we get 8 over 12 minus negative 3 over 12. Here we have double negative, negative, negative. Whenever you have a double negative, it ends up turning into a positive. So this is actually 8 over 12 plus 3 over 12. And so we know our final answer is going to be over 12. So then we just need to add up 8 plus 3, and we get 11 over 12. Okay. Last one, we have 5 over 4 plus 6. So we know 6 is a whole number, so we're going to write it over 1. Common denominator between 4 and 1 is just going to be 4. So we only need to modify this one. We multiply top and bottom by 4. So we have 5 over 4 plus 24 over 4. And we know our final answer is going to be over 4. So now we're going to add up 24 and 5, and we get 29 over 4. Okay. So now at this point, you're going to try out the fraction review worksheet. At the very bottom, there's some cross multiplication questions. Those are similar to the cross multiplication we did in the last section. So you can use the same principles that we learned in chapter 4 when we did cross multiplication there. Okay, so you're going to try the fraction worksheet and then we'll move on to the next section.